All right, let's go ahead and get started. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, perfect. Well, welcome to our first live session for Design 105. Thank you guys for coming to the live session. It's always great to have live people here when I'm teaching these things. Our course this week, or this mod, is going to be on page layout tools. Specifically, we're going to be learning an application called InDesign, which is the default or premier page layout tool that you're going to come across in this industry. It's the one that's going to be used in really any job that you will find in graphic arts that involves page layout, which we're going to be talking more about today. So this week, what we're going to do just kind of a brief introduction, and we're going to then go through an introduction to the class, talking about what to expect every week, what the expectations are for the work. Talking about our multi-sessions and other ways to get help, and how to contact me if you need help with anything. And then we're going to jump into InDesign itself. We're going to talk about the discussion and the assignment and the assessment, and make sure that you guys have all the tools and information that you need in order to do that work that's necessary for this week. Okay. So first of all, to introduce you to me, my name is Jason Merrill. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and have been a graphic designer for over 20 years now. And I've worked here for the college for, it's actually going to be 10 years next month, or this month. It's October now. So this is 10 years later this month that I've been working here for the college. Yeah, it's been a long time. And I'm also one of the faculty program advisors and one of the associate deans in the program. So some of you may know me from that role, being your faculty program advisor. And I've got a pretty diverse background. I used to work for Apple Computers for one thing, and I do also run a Mac consulting business on the side where I have different individuals and businesses that have me go out to their office or their home and help them with anything that has to do with Apple products. I used to, when I right out of high school, I mentored with a Disney animator who'd been an animator for Disney since Sleeping Beauty, actually, a really cool guy named Ron DES, who taught me a lot about illustration and animation, and worked for several graphic design studios for Franklin Covey. And I love technology, I love art, and I find that graphic design is a really fantastic blending of the two, where you're able to enjoy the creative aspects of art while using these fantastic technological tools in order to create these things. So that's me. As far as you guys, a couple of things I want to know. One, tell me if you are a graphic design major or if you're a web design major. We should have both in the class here. And then let me know what Adobe products you've learned so far. And then this is more for you to do on your own, but double check that you've got things updated on your computer. If you're on a Mac, you're going to have the Creative Cloud icon up here in the menu bar up at the top. If you're on a Windows computer, it's going to be down on the taskbar on the bottom. Either way, it looks kind of like this figure 8 that fell over on its side. If you click on that and then click on Apps, just want to make sure, go to InDesign in here. If it says open, you're all set to go. You've got it all, downloaded and updated. If it says update, click on that and it'll update it to the most recent one. If it says install, click on that and it'll download and install the most recent version on your computer so you're ready to go. All right. Oh, that's great, Elisa. I'm just going through and reading the chat on here. That's awesome that you've got a passion for art as well. So graphic arts for Richard with a information design emphasis. Awesome, very cool. And graphic design for Kristen, and played around with the majority of them. Okay, great. All right, so Richard's done Photoshop and Illustrator. Awesome. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'd imagine most of you guys should have probably done Photoshop and Illustrator before this class. That's generally how it's done. And what you're going to find InDesign, a lot of the interface and just the way that you interact with the program is going to be very similar. They try to keep things so that you have a sense of understanding of how the program works. But some of the ways that it acts is very different, and that's what we're going to really focus on, is finding those differences. But you will find that it's going to be similar in the way that it looks and where you go to find different things. Oh, awesome. Yeah. So the reason I ask about the graphic design and the web design, looks like everyone here in the live session is graphic design. Anyone who is in the graphic design program, they would have sent you a Mac to work on. Anyone in web design, you'd be on a Windows computer. InDesign is really the same in both Windows or Mac. There's a couple of little tiny differences, and I'll kind of point those out as we go along, but they're really mostly keyboard based. So for example, on a Mac, any keyboard shortcut that involved the command key, it would be the same keyboard shortcut on a Windows computer, but you'd use control instead of command. Like for example, if I want to copy something on a Mac, I do command C, and on a Windows computer it'd be control C. So that's one difference. You'd see me saying, "Oh, press command this or control this" if you're in Windows. Another one is the Alt or Option key on a Mac. It's generally called Option, though it does say Alt on there too, smaller. On a Windows computer, that's just the Alt key. So Option and Alt are going to be the same thing, depending on if you're a Mac or Windows. On a Mac, the key that's labeled Return is the Enter key. On a Windows computer, and on a Mac, the key that's labeled Delete is the Backspace key. So again, they all do the same things. It's just that the labeling's a little different, and so sometimes, you know, just keep that in mind as we're going through this. If you're on a Windows computer or a Mac, I'll be pointing out both of them. The only one that's even remotely substantial is that the preferences are in a different menu in Windows than they are in the Mac, and I'll point out where that is today. Actually, we'll be doing something in the preferences, so I'll show where to find that. But other than that, they're identical. So it doesn't matter if you're on, if you're in graphic arts and working on a Mac, or if you're in web design working on a Windows computer, the functionality should be the same. But you can definitely let me know if you run into any questions or problems while you're working with those. Okay. All right. Oh, digital imaging and photo manipulation. Nice. Yeah, when we take those into InDesign, we do that pre-InDesign, as you'll see as we jump into here. All right, so let's go into our classroom, and I want to go over a couple of things just in the classroom itself. Okay, so first of all, here in the classroom, if you click this button here that says About the Instructor, on the little bio picture there, this has mostly the same information that I just told you about myself, but it also has my contact information. So you've got my phone number in here, you've got my email address in here. If you need to get a hold of me for any reason, then this is where you can go to get that in order to get a hold of me. Now it says here the best way to get a hold of me quickly is email. You're welcome to call me. That's by no means, you know, trying to steer you away from calling me. It's just that, you know, with the courses I teach, as well as being a FPA, I spend a lot of time in meetings with people where I couldn't actually answer a phone call. But my emails all go to my phone as well as my laptop, and there are definitely times when I am unable to answer a phone call, but am able to respond to an email. You know, like if I'm just sitting in a meeting listening, I'll see my emails come in and can often reply to them just while I sit there in the meeting. So if you've got a quick question, then an email's a lot of times going to be the way to get the fast answer back to you. If you want to talk on the phone, that's totally fine. Just give me a call. There's a decent chance you'll get my voicemail if you do that. But that's, you know, just leave me a message and I will definitely call you back. Okay. All right. So going back to our homepage here, one thing I like to point out that a lot of students have found helpful, but I think a lot of people don't get shown right away, has to do with getting help on the website itself, okay? So we're gonna talk in a few minutes about getting help with the assignments or getting help with InDesign, all that sort of stuff. This isn't that. This is if you're having a problem with the actual course website. So let's say you're trying to submit your work and it won't let you submit it, okay? Or let's say that you are trying to embed an image in your discussion and it's having a problem doing that. If you look over on the left here, there's a button that says help, there's a little question mark. This is for Canvas's support team. Now, Canvas is the company that supports our websites, okay? So if you come in here, you can either call them. There's one here that says support hotline students. There's a phone number. Or down here, the chat with Canvas support students, you can open up a live chat with them. they have the ability to see like the logs on the back end and see exactly what's going on when you're accessing the website and what could be causing the problem. And they're available, you know, I believe they're available really 24 hours. I could be wrong about that, but I've never reached out for them and not gotten them, and do a great job of quickly solving those problems. So if you're having a problem with the website itself, trying to do something like submit your work or do your post, anything like that, come over here and click on this help, and you can either call them or do a live chat, and they can help you out with that. Okay, any questions on that? All right. Let's go next here on the homepage into this button that says live session. Okay. This live session button, one, it's got the link in the schedule for our live sessions. So since you guys are here, you obviously have found that link. Oh, no problem, Tanya. Thanks for coming. But down here below that, you're going to see they've got recorded sessions, and you've got week 1 here. It's got every single week. Every week has 2 like lectures. Okay. One of them is pre-recorded. One of them was done a long time ago. It's already loaded in the course for every single week, and that is lecture 1. Lecture 1 is going to cover some more of like the theory, the history, some of the tools, that sort of thing, and is definitely something you want to watch. Okay. Lecture 2 is what you're in right now. Lecture 2 is going to be our live session that we do every week. Lecture 2 is going to be more focused directly on the work for that week. Okay, so lecture 2 is going to be the one that gets you ready to get your assignment done, to get your assessment done, to get your discussion done. So definitely, this is where you want to focus for like getting ready for the work, and then lecture 1 is going to also help with the assessments and kind of expand your knowledge of these things. Okay. So again, lecture 2 is going to be the big one for the work. And I always emphasize that because I quite often get people that'll watch lecture 1 and then be like, well, I didn't really understand what I'm supposed to do. And that, again, is because we'll be covering that here in the live session. So after this is over, I'll be posting the recording link right here. I also put it in the announcements over here, and I also email it out. So you shouldn't have any problems finding the link for the live sessions when it's done. But this is one of the places you can find it, is here in this live sessions and recordings. Okay. Now, if I go back to the home page, I'm going to click on a link here that says readings and videos. And this is where the rest of the material for each week is. Now, don't get freaked out when you see this lecture 1 all long up here again. This is the same exact one that was already posted over in that other page. You don't need it, there's not 2 of those. It just, they're both in, it's posted in both places. So if you've already watched it over there, you can just skip right over it. But down below that, we've got these shorter videos that add in a lot of context and give you more detail on how to work with these tools. Okay. So again, it's broken down by week. It's also broken down by required ones and then optional. So the optional ones just have additional information if you want them. But this is going to be where you're going to find your additional like reading and videos. I think they're pretty much all videos in here, but reading or videos for each week. Okay. And then these are accessed using, a lot of these are accessed using LinkedIn Learning. Okay. And with LinkedIn Learning, you're just going to click on the student access portal here, and they've got a little video that goes through how to get into these. But basically, once you've set up your account and linked it with your personal account the first time, then you just click that link and it takes you right in, and they've got the videos ready for you to watch. Okay. So any questions on what to go through and where to find the material for each week? Okay. All right. So coming back here to the home page then, let's talk about our announcements. So, we've got this announcements link here. I'm going to be posting things in here throughout the mod. So definitely just do me a favor, and when you come into the class, come into here and just see if there's anything new that's been posted that you haven't seen yet. Take a minute and read it if there is, because I'll be putting, like I said, important things in here. There are a couple things in here right now that I want to make sure to go through though. One, this link here that says possible InDesign bug and how to fix it. So this is something that I thought had gone away. I wrote this over a year ago, and I haven't seen it for a long time, but lately I've started seeing it again. If you are working on your assignments in InDesign and it looks like big chunks of your page are just missing, like basically just, you know, like you see, it's like if someone broke a glass page and took some of the shards out of it. It's hard for me to even explain. I don't have it, so I can't show it, but you'll recognize it really fast if you do. You'll just see chunks missing from your page. If that's happening, you have this bug. It's very easy to fix, thank goodness. So you can just come in here and follow these instructions here, these 3 steps here, and it'll fix the issue. If you have trouble following those instructions or it doesn't fix it for any reason, then reach out to me and I can help you with it. Most of you probably won't see anything at all from this. Most people aren't being affected by it, but occasionally I'm just seeing it pop up. I had 2 students last mod that had this, I think, out of about 75, if that gives you an idea of how many. But so you don't want to do this if you don't have the bug, because it's not necessary and it actually turns off a couple of things. But if you do have it, this is how you fix it. Okay. Also here in the announcements, let's talk about getting help if you need some help. So InDesign is a very powerful program that you are going to use in a lot of classes. You're going to have a lot of classes where your homework, or, you know, not your homework, where your assignments for the week are made in InDesign. You're also going to use it heavily in your career, more than likely. And so my biggest goal here is that you understand the basics of InDesign when you leave the course. Like, you know, getting a good grade in the class, obviously you want to do that, but like really the most important thing is that you are feeling comfortable with InDesign. So I say that because I really want you guys to be thinking along that line, along the lines of really understanding these things. What I don't want is when you're working on your work for you just hit a wall and feel like, well, I don't really understand how to fix this, but whatever, it's good enough, and just submit it and move on. Because the problem is that'll come up again. Later on in some other class, you're going to get asked to do it and you're going to have the same problem. So we really want to make sure that if there's any holes in your understanding, if there's any, you know, hurdles that are you're struggling with the program, we want to address those and take the time to get them working well for you, right? Yeah, there you go, Richard. But so that said, we've got all sorts of different ways for you to get one-on-one help while you're working in the course, and please take advantage of them if you're finding yourself struggling with anything with the work. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about that we have is our multi-session. Every single week I'm going to be doing a multi-session here in our Zoom room. It's going to be the exact same time that the live session is, 10 a.m. to noon, but it's going to be on Thursdays. Okay, so on Thursdays we're gonna be in here. It's not a lecture. It's not like if you don't have questions, then there's no point in coming. I'm not going to be going over things. I'm not going to record anything. It's specifically a time set up for you to come in here and say, hey, I'm having a hard time with this part, or hey, can you explain to me how to do this? And for me to help you one-on-one with things. Okay? So every Thursday, 10 a.m. to noon Mountain Time, I'm here in the Zoom room for you to come in and get some help if you need it. Okay? So that's one way for you to get some one-on-one help. Another way, let's just say that you're like, well, that's great, but I'm not available then. I have work, or whatever is going to keep me from making it to that. Well, the great thing is we have all sorts of other multi-sessions. Right here, there's an announcement that says 100 level multi-session schedule mod 10. If you click on that, there's a little link here to a PDF. And this PDF shows you the multi-sessions that are happening this mod. So over here, you've got a schedule. It's arranged by day. So we've got a bunch on Tuesday, a bunch on Wednesday, 3 of them on Thursday, and 1 of them on Friday. And it looks like there's 1 on Saturday too over here. Now they're not in order, okay? So like, for example, this one starts with 1:30, but down here I've got 9:30 a.m. They're not in chronological order. They're actually in the order of the people teaching them over here. So it doesn't matter what class they're teaching, doesn't matter what teacher it is. You are able to go to any of these. If you're looking through and you're like, oh, so 4 p.m. on Saturday is going to work well for me, just go to that block and go directly to the left, and this is the link to get into that multi-session. Okay, so you've got all these available for one-on-one help as well. So any questions on the multi-sessions? All right. So let's just say that you look those over and those still aren't going to work well for your schedule. Well, we've also got our learning coach. Learning coach is basically a tutor who has been assigned to this course. Christy Paulson is our learning coach. She's fantastic. I've worked with her for years. And every week I'm going to be posting her schedule for the week in here. So down here you can see this week she's available on Wednesday from 12 to 3 and on Thursday from 12 to 5. And then her contact information is down here. So if you want to get together with Christy to get some help with anything, you can just reach out to her and set up a time during those blocks that she's available, and she can help you out as well. Okay. And then lastly, let's just say you're like, well, even that, I have a really tight schedule. I work 2 jobs. I just don't have time during those time slots. The last resource we have is called our Student Success Center. So if we go back to the home page and I click this link that says Student Success Center, I'm going to click on hours of operation here, and I'm going to go to graphic arts, and you can see these guys have very broad hours, right? They're open till 11 o'clock at night a lot of times, open throughout in the morning till late at night. So you can come in here. This is manned by learning coaches. It's basically a tutoring center, and they're available to assist if you need some one-on-one help as well. Okay, so you've got our multi-session, you've got the other multi-sessions, you've got our learning coach, and you've got the Student Success Center. All of that is there to help you one-on-one if you're struggling with anything. So please make use of it, and let's make sure that you're feeling really good about InDesign before the course is over. Okay, any questions about any of that? All right. If it's something, yeah, it's something you already did, absolutely, yeah. This is a lot, as far as, yeah, I mean, I can't think of any situation where that wouldn't be, yeah, we just definitely want to help you out with stuff. All right. Oh, the cube for Illustrator. Yeah, if you were going, especially if you go into, I mean, any of us can help you with that, but if you go into here, these are the instructors that are teaching 103 illustration, this mod, so they would especially be, it's what they're working with right now. But any of us, I mean, I could help you with that too if you come into our multi-session. All right. So let's talk about the expectations for the course, okay? So every single week, we're going to have a graded discussion post. On the discussion post, you're going to be doing, we've got the prompt that tells you what you need to be writing about. And you need to do your initial post to that prompt by 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time, okay? And so that's on Wednesday. Sorry, let's just put that out. So tomorrow, 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time, we need to have that initial post done to the prompt. And that's going to be at least 150 words and have at least 1 citation in it. So then, in addition to that, you're going to go through and read what your classmates are posting and reply to at least 2 of theirs. And those need to be done by the end of the week, 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time on Saturday. Now, the last thing in order to get full credit on the discussions is make sure you're splitting that up in some way between at least 2 days of the week. So I don't care how you split it up, but just make sure that you're in the discussions doing something on at least 2 days of the week to get full credit for it. Okay. So any questions on the discussions? You have to have, the requirement is to have some sort of reference. So, if it's something, you could go look for something that else that talks about it, or you could cite a reference about something different. But something, you have to have some form of a reference on the discussion, on the initial post. Okay. Alyssa, so as long you can definitely do 2 replies the same day you post discussions, you just have to do something on multiple days. So if you go do a 3rd reply on another day, that would give you that would qualify it. But some sort of participation has to have happened in the discussions on at least 2 days of the week. That makes sense? So you can split it up however you want, but just somehow it needs to be split up. All right. The idea of that is just to get you in there looking at things people may have replied to what you said, to kind of keep the conversation going. All right. So in addition to that, we've got our assignments and our assessments. In this class, 3 of our assessments are quizzes and 1 of them is a project. Those are all due by the end of the week, Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. If you are not going to be able to make that deadline for some reason, maybe you're sick or something's happened with your work, make sure to reach out to me. There are certain circumstances where I can make arrangements and give you an extension of a little time to get it in. I can't in every situation, but I can definitely, on the ones where I'm able to, I definitely will. But if you don't reach out to me or we don't work something out and it's after the deadline, you still can definitely turn it in. There's just a small deduction for it being submitted late. So it's still 100% worth doing if you don't get it on time, but best to get it in on time because then you'll get the full amount of points. Okay. Now, let's talk about something with revising. In our field, revisions are a very big part of what we do. We revise things all the time. I have never done a professional project that did not involve multiple rounds of revising the project and going over it again with the client, okay? So I want you to get you in that habit right away. On any of your assignments and on your 1 project-based assessment, so it's the week 3 assessment, I can't do this on the quizzes, but on the assignments and the week 3 assessment, I not only accept, but I encourage resubmissions. What that means is, let's say you submit your assignment, I will go in and in the rubric, I will always give specific feedback of anything that you lost points for. And if you lost points, you are more than welcome to go in and read in the rubric why you lost the points, revise your assignment and change, so that those are fixed, and then resubmit it. I do all the grading for this course on Mondays. And so if you revise and resubmit an assignment, then the following Monday when I grade again, I'll go in and I'll regrade the resubmission and I'll adjust the score to give you back any points that you made up for with your revision. So bottom line is, with the assignments, no points need to be permanently lost. If you lose some points, you can revise it, resubmit it, and get those points back. Okay, so keep that in mind, and definitely make sure to read those comments in the rubric to see what things you may be able to do that with. All right, any questions on that at all? Okay, so we already talked about the multi-sessions and how to get a hold of me. All right, so any questions at all on just the general running of the course before we move on to getting actually into InDesign? Okay. So this week, these are our learning objectives for week 1. We're going to learn some of the basic InDesign tools and terms. We're going to be able, by the end of the week, you guys should be able to define how InDesign is used in the field and be able to describe 5 scenarios in which it would be used. Be able to identify and match 10 basic tools to the description of their use. Be able to identify and match 5 InDesign panels to their functions. Be able to create new InDesign documents and insert text frames and images, which images in InDesign are handled quite differently than the other applications. So we'll be going through that today and seeing exactly how that's done. And then be able to describe the difference between InDesign's rectangle tool and the rectangle frame tool. Okay. We want to be able to utilize the rectangle, oval, and line tools to create a composition in InDesign. We want to be able to utilize InDesign's character panel to apply changes to the font size, kerning, tracking, and leading. Be able to illustrate how to utilize the color palette within InDesign. And then be able to prepare an InDesign document for print output using the package tool. Now that's a big one. Every single file you guys submit this mod is going to be submitted as what's called an InDesign package. And that's a special way to get a file ready to print. And I'm going to be demonstrating that. It's going to be the last thing we do today, actually, is demonstrating how to create that package. But pay close attention to it because that's how you're going to be submitting your work. Okay. And then be able to show correct image resizing and cropping methods within InDesign, which goes back to what I said earlier of images being handled quite differently in InDesign than what we've probably dealt with before. Okay, so that's kind of what we're focusing on here. Let's start off by talking about the discussion. And the discussion has to do with using InDesign in the field. So to get started on that, let's talk about the name of this course. The name of this course is Page Layout Tools. And again, we're talking about InDesign as a page layout tool. Who can tell me what they think is meant by page layout? Anyone have any ideas what that means when we say page layout? It could be for a web page. You know, InDesign is more regularly used for print, but it can be done for a web page as well. And web pages definitely involve page layout. Yeah, ads, books. Those are all the things it's used for, definitely. So, but what do you think specifies it? What do you think makes it page layout? What, you know, when someone says I'm going to do page layout on a web page, I'm going to do page layout in a magazine, what do you think they're talking about when they say page layout? Well, so a template would be a good example of something that has page layout for sure. Text and images, absolutely. Figuring out where everything goes. That's exactly right. We're taking multiple elements and we're figuring out how they go together, right? So we're in the, you know, when we're dealing with Photoshop, for example, you know, Photoshop's mainly going to be dealing with manipulating raster imagery, right? And we're dealing with Illustrator, we're dealing with drawing these vector illustrations. But when we're dealing with taking these multiple elements and putting them together in a final output, final page, that's where InDesign comes in, where we're taking our text, we're taking our images, we're taking our logo, we're taking our illustration, we're taking everything together that needs to come together and putting it on the page in a arranged layout. That's page layout, and that is what InDesign really excels at. Okay, so yeah, exactly right on those. Now, you can do, so this really comes down to one of those learning what tool works best for what job, right? So for example, if I were going to create a magazine page, could I do it in Photoshop? Yeah. I could also hammer a nail in with a screwdriver as long as I hit the back of the nail with the back of the screwdriver, but it wouldn't be the best way to do it, right? It's possible, but it's not the best choice. Exactly. It's, you know, in Photoshop has some type tools, but that's not its strong point. It's actually pretty weak when it comes to type. Exactly. That would hurt. That's exactly right. Where Photoshop shines, Photoshop is the premier tool for manipulating and preparing raster imagery, right? But that's what its strong point is. That's what the tool is there for. Illustrator actually has some pretty fantastic type tools. Got some great stuff with text in Illustrator. However, if you were dealing with lots of pages and lots of text, you're still going to run into some headaches with Illustrator that InDesign is designed to make things easier for, right? So yeah, where InDesign shines is anything that involves a lot of text anything that involves multiple pages. InDesign, anywhere from 2 pages up to 10,000 pages, InDesign is amazing at multiple page layout. And then anything that involves working with a lot of different elements and laying them out on the page together, that's where you're generally going to move into InDesign. Okay, so if you were to go into a magazine publisher, that's what they're using. The magazine pages, they're all being laid out in InDesign. You go into a book publisher, that's what they're using to get the books ready to go. Newspaper, exactly right. InDesign is what they're laying everything out in. Advertising agencies, anyone that's doing posters, anyone that's doing billboards, these sort of things are generally being done in InDesign. Okay, but the elements that are being used in those things are often being prepared in the other programs. The photos are being prepared in Photoshop. The logos are being made in Illustrator. Yeah, packaging, definitely, which you'll be taking some packaging courses and laying out packaging in InDesign. Exactly. So that's what InDesign does, and that's what page layout is. Everyone clear on that? Any questions at all on what is page layout or what you would be going to InDesign for? Okay. So let's go to our discussion. First of all, there are 2 discussions this week, but only one of them is graded. Okay. Oh, yeah? Nice. Very cool. So this one here, this introduce yourself discussion, this is not graded. This is just a way for us to get to know each other. So I definitely would ask that you participate in it, but again, it's not going to affect your grade. Just go in there, and it talks about what kind of art we like the most and a little bit about ourselves. Okay. The one that is going to be graded for this week is this one right here. Week 1 discussion, InDesign in field. Okay. So I'm going to skip over the background, but definitely take a moment to read it. It's got some good information in it. We're going to go down to the prompt. It says, for this discussion, we will look at InDesign and how it is used in field today. You might try a job website like monster.com. Consider checking a few others like Indeed, the Art Career Project, or any job listing resource you know of. Use InDesign as a keyword for your search and take note of the job titles and descriptions that come up. Are any of the listings something you might be interested in? Why or why not? In your post, write about one of the positions you found and list the job duties that require InDesign knowledge as a skill. Okay. Now, this is kind of a 2-part discussion, so I'm going to stop there and we're going to look at the second part in a second. But this is the first part. Okay. Use Indeed. There you go. So all we're going to do here for the first part, I'm going to go to just this link for Monster, but you can go to Indeed or whatever other one you want to. We just need to go to a job search board. And I'm going to look in my county, Salt Lake County, and you're going to put InDesign as the keyword that we're looking for. And just click to look for jobs. So you can see that right now, at this moment in my county, there are 25 job listings on monster.com that have the word InDesign as a keyword. Okay. Over here on the left, I can see what these jobs are. So for graphic artist, marketing team for the University of Utah. Union Development and Communication Specialist for the University of Utah, staff editor for Deseret Mutual Benefit Administrations, marketer, junior to mid-level UX designer, all sorts of different types of positions, senior technical writer, but they involve InDesign in some way or another. So if you find one that's interesting to you, maybe I'm interested in this one at the U, you click on that and come over and read about it. And I can come down here and see in my qualifications. Where are you? Somewhere down here. There we are. InDesign. Proficient in utilizing design and publishing software, including Adobe Creative Suite, InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator, and proficient with Microsoft applications. Okay. So I'm going to read about the job, read about what it requires and why InDesign is a part of that. And then you're going to come back here and you're going to talk about what you found. Are there any of them that you're interested in and why not? Okay. So that's part 1. Any questions on part 1 of the discussion? All right. Now, the reason I split it up between part 1 and part 2 is because the part 2 gets missed a lot because part 1 takes up so much of the chunk of text here. Part 2 here just says, list ideas of how you will become a Power InDesign user so you can be hired. For example, to become a Power InDesign user, I will learn one InDesign shortcut a day, and then discuss why you feel your methods will be successful. So we found this job, these jobs, we've talked about what they are and whether it's something we'd be interested in. Now we're going to talk about some sort of a strategy that we have that is going to make us a pro at InDesign so that when we are ready to start applying for these jobs, we're the best candidate for the job. Okay, so what are we going to do and why do we think it would be successful? Okay, so that's our discussion for the week. Any questions at all on the discussion? All right. Okay, so let's go back out here and let's take a look at our assessment. Our assessment is just a quiz this week. I would definitely, watching this live session is going to give you a lot of the information. I would also watch that pre-recorded session before taking this. It is an 11-question quiz. There are no retakes on this one, but it does have no time limit. So you can take as much time as you want, find those answers while you're working in it. The learning objectives that are covered for this, so again, these aren't the questions or anything, but it's going to focus on being able to identify and match 10 basic tools to the description of their use, being able to identify and match 5 InDesign panels and their functions, being able to describe the difference between InDesign's rectangle tool and the rectangle frame tool, and being able to create a new document in InDesign and insert text frames and images. Okay, those are going to be where the questions are going to focus on. So that's our assessment. Any questions on the assessment for the week? All right. So let's talk about our assignment then. The first thing, we're going to go in here and we're going to look at the what of our assignment. So don't worry about the fact that we haven't gotten in InDesign. I totally understand that we don't know how to do this yet. We're just going to talk about what we're doing, okay? In weeks 1 and 2, we are going to be working on a menu. It's going to carry over this week to next week. It's the 2-part project. This week, I want to be very clear because this is the thing that I find is the most commonly misunderstood part of this assignment, is that this week we are only doing menu covers. We are not doing the inside page of the menu itself. Now, the reason that gets confusing is you're going to download some assets for your menus, and one of the things in the assets you download is an inside page and is text on the inside pages. That is because these assets are the assets for both weeks. It's the assets for this week and the assets for next week, and those are being used in both of them. So this week we're ignoring anything that has to do with an inside cover or inside page, I should say. Everything this week has to do with the covers. Does that make sense? Okay. So what we're doing this week is 2 pages, but what we're doing is 2 menu covers. Down below, there are 3 restaurants that we're going to talk about in a minute. You're going to pick one of these restaurants that you want to be your client. You're going to be making a menu for this restaurant. And this week, what we're doing is we're creating 2 different designs for the cover. Now, this is very common in graphic design, and that is that we will start off by giving our clients 2 or more directions that they can choose from. So the idea is that they're both going to be covers for the same restaurant, but they're going to be different design ideas, so that if you were to then take this to the restaurant owner, they could look at the 2 different designs and say, this is the one that I like the most. I want to go more this way with the menu. And then you would then design the inner page to match that cover based upon the design direction that they chose. Okay, so we're doing 2 menu covers for the same restaurant, but they're two different designs, two different ideas for the menu cover. Does that make sense? Any questions at all on just the general what we're doing here? Okay. So down here, you've got your general directions on it. And for some reason, I've been having this wants to pop back up to the top. But you've got your prompt, which we're going to go through later on when we're actually working in InDesign. And then you've got these 3 restaurants down here we're going to talk about right now. Each one of these restaurants has a link to download assets to that restaurant. Okay. So if you, let me pull up this here. So these are the assets for these different links. Okay. So Maxwell's restaurant, you can see that in any of them, they're going to vary a little bit what you have, but basically you're going to get these main elements. You're going to get the logo for the restaurant. Okay. You're going to get a few example images, which we'll talk about in a minute. You're welcome to use, not like you can use these in your design if you want to, or you can use no images other than the logo, or you can come up with your, find your own images. You don't need to use these ones, but it does give you some that you can use. It's going to have an example of a cover and an example of an inner page. You do not want to copy these examples. Okay. Great question, Richard. Short answer is yes, but we're going to talk about that in just one second. But yeah, do not copy these examples. You're coming up with your own designs. This is just here to give us just an idea of like what a menu cover for this might look like. But we're not making this menu cover. We're doing our own menu covers. Okay. So, and then we've got 2 text documents. One has the menu cover text. So this is what we're working with this week. Don't use the word logo. That just means the logo needs to be on the menu. But the company's tagline in this case is fine steaks and seafood. Here's their address. Here's their phone number. Here's their hours of operation. Those all need to be on the menu cover. Next week when we're doing our inside page, this is the menu text for the inside page. So Richard, I get where you're coming from, but you got to think again. This is to exemplify a professional job. If I'm doing a menu for a restaurant, in 99.9% of the cases, they're going to say, "And here's the text for the menu." They're not going to say, "So write our menu for us," right? It's very, very common for us to give the menu text. No, because I mean, again, real world example. That's like asking a restaurant owner, "Can I change your hours a little bit?" No, we have our hours set. So no, for this particular one, you're going to get more freedom with that. But like for this, in other projects, for this particular one, we have our set text, and we have to utilize, first of all their text. We can't leave any of their text out. And then secondly, we need to make sure to stick exactly with their text. Okay. So this is going to be an example of us being given the elements. We're given text. We're given some images, but again, we have freedom on the images. We can make our own. We're given a logo, and then we're going to use our creativity and our design skills in order to create 2 examples of a menu cover for this restaurant. Okay. Yeah. Well, and double, if you've already submitted, there's a few, double check, because there's a couple other things we want to make sure that we're doing on this. But if it's very possible that you already have it done right. Just double check it on here. Okay, so with these images, like I said, we've got some images in here that you can use, but you don't need to use these ones. If you want to find your own images, you just need to make sure they're good high-resolution images and that they are not watermarked. A really good site for getting some free ones, if you want, is called Pexels.com. So Pexels.com has free high-quality stock photos. That's Pexels. So I can come here, for example, let's say I was doing Maxwell's, I could just type steak, if I wanted to find a good steak image. These top ones, these bigger top ones here are all free. If I wanted this one, I would just click on it and do free download. I'd get a high resolution image of it. It could be PNG or JPEG, Richard. The file type doesn't matter as much. But so down here, though, at the bottom, you'll see that I get some sponsored photos. These aren't free. This is just ads. If I click on that, it'll take me to Adobe Stock and ask if I want to pay for them. But you can see I've got a big list of free ones I could go between here. So you can find your own images. You can use the ones that are provided, or for the cover, really the only image that's required to be on the cover is the logo. However you want to do that, and whatever works best with your design. Okay. So let's talk for a second about the restaurants themselves, because one of the things we want to be doing in this assignment, we want to start thinking about making our designs speak to the audience in the best way. Okay, we want our design to represent our client well, and to give the message to the audience that they are going to be, you know, their customers who goes to their restaurant. We want to make sure that our design is speaking to them. Okay, so I'm going to read through these, and I want you to just think of some adjectives that come to mind when you hear these descriptions of these restaurants. Okay, so our first choice is Maxwell's. Maxwell's tagline is "Fine steaks and seafood." Maxwell's, it says, has graced downtown Atlanta for over 80 years. Since they're known worldwide for their overall customer experience, there's a 6-month waiting list for reservations. All the staff is in tuxedos, and crisp white linens grace the candlelit tables. Their entrees range from $52 to $82, with all their side dishes served a la carte. It says this truly exemplifies what fine dining experience means. So based upon that, what are some adjectives that come to mind that would describe Maxwell's? Well, I'll get you started. How about fancy? Well, so 80 years experience, that is what they have. So what's, you know, let's say traditional would probably be a big one there, or historic, right? This place is expensive. How's that for a description of Maxwell's? How would you describe Maxwell's to people? Is this the kind of place that if you don't feel like making dinner, you're going to grab the kids and throw them in the car and we're going to take them to Maxwell's? Probably not, right? Got a 6-month waiting list to get in, first of all. Pricey, fancy dining, exactly. Romantic, right? This place is a very fancy, very traditional, very kind of elite and expensive place to eat. Formal, exactly. So when we're making our menu, we want to be thinking about that. What kind of a menu is going to convey that? What kind of a menu is going to fit well into that atmosphere and feel like it represents this restaurant to its customers? So if I come here, a great thing to do when you're working on these menus, do some research, go to Google and search something. So I'm just searching steak restaurant menu, and then click on images, and you can see some examples of other restaurants' menus, and these can give you some ideas. Again, we're not going to copy them, but it's going to give us some ideas of what, you know, things we might do. So based upon the description that we just read about Maxwell's, would you expect their menu to look like this? Probably not, right? It's probably going to be more in line with something like this. So yeah, it's a matter, you know, this is not going to be Maxwell's menu. It's a matter of aiming that menu toward the intended audience, making sure that it represents the restaurant well. All right, so our second choice here, oh, these are the pictures that come with Maxwell's, and that's the example images for Maxwell's. So our second choice is the Starlight Bistro. Starlight Bistro's tagline is "Something Great by the Sea." It says best friends Margot and Penny opened Starlight Bistro after not finding what they really wanted in a restaurant, which was healthy food. Starlight Bistro is a very small restaurant, decorated with holiday lights, star ornaments, and colorful prints. It is eclectic in food, entertainment, and the personalities on both sides of the counter. Shoes are optional, as they're situated right on the beach. For under $20, you can get a healthy meal with a fabulous view. So what sort of adjectives come to mind that might describe Starlight Bistro? Tranquil. That's a good one, yeah. Beach view. I'd say colorful. In fact, it says, they've got star ornaments, holiday lights. Relaxed. Yeah, it's definitely a casual place, right? You don't have to wear shoes if you don't want to. Lighthouse. Yeah. Sunsets. So when if this is the one you choose, be thinking those things in mind. This place is casual. This place is colorful. This place is fun. This place is relaxing. So how's your menu going to represent that? Okay, great. So these are the example images that they give you with Starlight Bistro. And then that's an example menu that they give. All right, our last choice is Wok and Roll, which is a Chinese and sushi restaurant. That's their tagline, actually, Chinese and sushi restaurant. It says the Wok and Roll came about when restaurant owners Liu and Wen decided to stop competing for Orlando's best in Asian cuisine and instead join forces and create a unique Orlando dining experience. Families from around the world feel comfortable in the simple, contemporary black, white, and red decor. Prices range from $8.95 to $15.95 for a plate that is certain to yield more than one meal. So what sort of adjectives come to mind with the Wok and Roll? Simple, yeah. How about family friendly, right? It says right there, families from around the world come in. Different, yeah. I'd say cheap. You're gonna go in there and buy a plate that says that plate's for more than one meal. You get these big servings for $8.95 to $15.95. So good, affordable for families. 2 for 1, yeah. Now here's a big clue if you're doing this one. It says right here in the description, simple contemporary black and white and red decor. So if you go into this place, the inside of the restaurant looks simple, it looks contemporary, and the colors are all black, white, and red. So when you're thinking of doing your menu, be thinking how would that menu fit into that environment? All right. Now here are the images that they provide for the Wok and Roll. And that's the example menu they give. But so we are creating 2 menu covers this week. We're not doing anything with the inside page. 2 menu covers that are different designs for the same restaurant. And there you go. Yeah, me too. So we're going to go in and we're going to look in InDesign next. Before we do that, any questions on just the what we're doing? We're going to look at how and how we do it now. But any questions on what we're doing for our assignment this week? All right. Well, then I want to take a little break. Let's take a 10-minute break. And then when we come back, we're going to jump into InDesign, and we're going to look at how to do this for the rest of our session today. But for now, go stretch your legs, or get a drink, or whatever you need to do. And I will see you guys back here in 10 minutes. All right, we are back. Can you guys hear me again? Okay. All right, so let's talk about getting into InDesign. What we're going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. So this is kind of our landing page in InDesign. And the first thing I'm talking about is the default setting for the units, the sizing units that InDesign uses. If I click here and say that I want to create a new document, you'll see over here on the side that my units is set to inches by default. I can click on this arrow and I can change that to another unit if I need to for this project, but the default it goes to is inches. When you first open InDesign, its default is picas. And you're probably going to want to change that. For picas are a lot smaller than inches, so if you accidentally just type in the size you're supposed to have for this, you're actually going to end up with a page. This is supposed to be 8.5 by 11. You'll end up with a page that's less than 2 inches big, and you'll end up with very little room to work. So you can just change it to inches right here, but I'm going to show you how to change the default to inches so that it's on inches from the beginning when you go to different projects. First of all, you need to have this closed, and you can't have a document open either. If this is open or you have a document open, doing this will change the units for that document. Okay, so I'm just going to click close right here, and you need to be on this like landing page for when you first open InDesign. Then we need to go into the preferences. Now, on a Windows computer, the preferences are under the Edit menu. On a Mac, they're under this InDesign menu. So either go to Edit or InDesign, depending on what computer you're on, and then go to Preferences. And in here, you're going to go to the preference section called Units and Increments. In there, it's right up here at the top. It is the horizontal and vertical we want to change. So origin stays the same, but horizontal changes to inches, vertical changes to inches, and then click OK, and that will then be the default when you go to Create New. Any questions on that? All right. Let's talk about setting up this document then. You can just type everything in over here, but you can also go to a preset. If I go to Print up here at the top and choose Letter, then I'm going to get some presets ready, for me, which some of the letter settings are the same. So, for example, my size is 8.5 by 11, so I don't need to worry about typing that in. But either way you do it, just make sure your width is set to 8.5 and your height is set to 11. Make sure your units are inches like we just talked about. We need this to be 2 pages. We need to uncheck facing pages, okay? So we do not want that checked. That creates what's called spreads. We're going to deal with those starting week 3. So uncheck facing pages. Down here in my margins, I'm going to change my margins to 0.375. Now, if this little chain over here is linked, changing one of these will change them all. So that's a good time saver. If you need these to be different, you just uncheck this chain before doing it. But since they're all the same, I'll leave that checked. I'll type 0.375. That goes ahead and changes them all for me. And the last setting I need to set is my bleed. And we're going to talk about what a bleed is for in just a second. But I need to have a bleed set for 0.125 inches. Make sure you're doing the decimal before the 1. It's not 1.25, but 0.125. And that is all around, top, bottom, left, and right for my bleed. We're not doing a slug. You can ignore that. Just bleed. Now, margins and bleed will be collapsed at first. It'll look like this. So you just click on margins to get that out. Click on bleed to get that out. But it's all listed in the instructions, but this is the settings we want to have. 8.5 by 11 inches, 2 pages, facing pages turned off, margins set to 0.375, and bleed set to 0.125. So any questions on setting up that document? right, so let's click create. And here is my document, and you can see that the layout for InDesign is going to be quite similar to what you've seen in Photoshop or in Illustrator. We've got our tools over here on the left. We've got our panels over here on the right. And then we have what's called our control panel up here on the top, which will be used for a few things as well. Let's go ahead and make that a little larger. Now, when I look at my document here, you're going to see that I see some lines on my page, okay? I've got this purple line that's running inside my page. Then you can see I've got the page's edge where the white ends. And then I have a red line on the outside of my page. So when we're working in InDesign, we see our guidelines visibly while we work. And then we can make them disappear temporarily when we want to see preview the page. So the purple line on the inside, that is my margin, okay? A margin is when you're looking at a magazine, when you're looking at a book, you know, they've all got margins. Margins is the space between the edge of text and the edge of the page. So you can see here this blank space, that is my margin. Okay, so we've all seen it, but we may not have consciously thought about it being there. That is what you're seeing with this purple line. So my text would be aligned inside that purple line, leaving this margin padding between the edge of my page and the margin and the text. Does that make sense? Any questions on that, on this margin line? Okay. The red line on the outside is my bleed. Anyone know what a bleed is for when you're doing printing? Okay. A bleed is a tool specifically for printing documents. Let's just say that I have this project I'm working on. I want to have a banner that's blue up at the top of my page, okay? So here I've got this blue banner running from the edges on the left and the right and going to the top edge of my page. This is what I want to print. Well, here's the problem. Printing presses are not perfect. The paper shifts, things move around here and there, and what I might end up with is something like this, where I have this little white line on one side or the other or on the top, and then my shape does not go to the edge like I wanted it to. Okay? So that's the problem. The solution is a bleed. Whenever we are printing something that has elements that go to the very edge of the page, we need to use a bleed. What we do is we extend those elements past the edge of the page all the way to the bleed line. So the way I would correctly set this up is like this. Now, when I print this, what happens is they actually print it on a larger piece of paper than what I want for my finished print job, and then they trim it down. They trim these bleeds off. So I end up with exactly the right size of page, and I end up with anything that's supposed to go to the edge definitely going to the edge, because it actually went past the edge and they trimmed that little bit off. Does that make sense? So that's a bleed. So where the bleed's going to come into play with your menu cover, you know, depending on what you have, you could have a banner like this. But if you have a background color, the way I would do a background color for my menu cover is I would go to my rectangle tool, and I would draw a rectangle that filled the entire area from bleed to bleed. It means because that touches the edges, I need to go all the way out to the bleeds. And then I would fill that whatever color I wanted my background to be. And this would be my background for my menu. But just remember, anything that goes to the edge, whether it's pictures, anything like that, needs to go to that bleed. Okay? Now, when we're working on things in InDesign, we often want to see what it's going to look like printed, right? I'm seeing bleeds, I'm seeing margin lines. When I put text frames on there, I see the text frames, I'm seeing all these things, and I just want to see what it looks like printed. What you don't want to do is go up to view and grids and guides and turn off your guides. You don't want to turn off your guides because you're going to need your guides. There's a keyboard shortcut that's very fast and easy that takes us to a preview mode and then back to this working mode. It's just W. The letter W on your keyboard. If you tap W, now I'm on a preview. You see my bleeds got trimmed off, my margin line's gone, and it shows me exactly what this is going to look like if it's printed. Tap W again, and I'm back to my working mode. Okay, let me pull this up so it's a banner, and you'll be able to see even better how that is. So you see how when it's like this, that pink is extending past the page to my bleed. If I hit W, trims that right off. Shows me what it's actually going to look like. Okay, so while you're working, you're going to want to do that every once in a while. Just tap W, see what your finished piece is going to look like. And you got to be careful with bleeds because if you put text, if you forget, and this is not an uncommon thing, let's go ahead and grab this and make it fill the page again. Let's pretend this is a background. And let's make it a little lighter color. Let's go and do a text frame. And I'm just going to fill this with placeholder text. Let's say that I just stick that up against the side of my page like that. Well, I need to remember my bleed's going to go away. See how that's getting trimmed off? That's one of the reasons why tapping that W is so important, so that I can see what it's going to look like when it's actually trimmed. Now, in reality, this being text, I wouldn't even want it up against the side of the page. I'd want it in there in the margin, so it wouldn't matter. But I just need to remember that anything that goes out past that edge of the page is getting trimmed off. And I need to make sure that I've got things aligned in a way to where it's going to stay on the page when the bleed is trimmed off. Got it? All right. Okay, so that's how we'd set up our, working with our bleeds, and if we're doing like a background image or anything like that, background color, anything like that. Next, it's best to say in the margin line for things with text. Yeah, for like an image or like a, or a background color, it's fine to go out to the edge of the page. But if you're doing that, you just need to make sure to go past it to the bleed. Like for example, well, I'm going to come back to that, show you in a second, because I want to talk about images now. And then once we've talked about how to do images, I'll show you how you'd work with an image with the bleeds, okay? So I told you earlier on that InDesign handles images different than the other programs, okay? Once you get used to it, it's really nice. It makes things so fast and easy, but it does take a little getting used to, okay? With InDesign, when you're dealing with an image, you're actually dealing with two different things. You're dealing with the image itself, and you're dealing with an image frame. Think of an image frame kind of like an instant mask that lets you have the image exactly the size you want. Okay? So if I'm putting an image in my document, here's how I would go about doing that. Over here in my toolbar, I've got my rectangle tool, and I've got this one that's got an X through the rectangle called the rectangle frame tool. Now these are different. The rectangle tool is just like you've seen in Illustrator, where it draws a rectangle. By default, if you haven't changed anything, you get a black stroke on this, and you're just drawing a rectangle. I mean, that's how I did my background. That's how I did my banner, was with the rectangle tool. The rectangle frame tool is meant to create a frame for an image. If I drag and draw with that, I get no stroke by default, and I get an X through the middle of it. Okay? The point of this is I'm making a landing place, a frame for an image. And so I can play with the size and placement here. I don't even worry about the image at first. I can say I want it there. I want it to come down to here. I want it to go out to middle of the page. So move it till I get a little guideline popping. There we go. So this is how I want my image to fit. Now that my frame is where I want it and the size I want it, I'm going to put an image in my frame. And I do that by going up to File and Place. And I'm going to go find an image. So I'm going to go to my downloads. Let's grab this honeybee here. Now I want to show you something. Look at this is my image. You can see I've got these thistles, I've got this bee. Now watch when I place it. Not the whole thing, right? I'm just seeing a little bit of my image. The reason why is the frame is masking the image. It put that image there in full size, and most of the image is outside the frame, so I can't see it. But I can see that whatever part of it is showing through the frame. Okay? So if I click on my frame, if I just select it with my selection tool, you'll see that I can adjust the edges of the frame, and I don't actually do anything to the image, right? I'm just showing more or less of the image based upon the sizing of my frame. If I want to adjust the image itself, there are two ways I can do that. One is I can click on this circle that shows up in the middle of the image frame when I hover on it. When I do that, you're going to see I get this new brown lines on the outside here. Those brown lines are my image. I can click and drag and hold down Shift so I don't mess up the sizing. Put it in the frame, resize it however I want and get it to fit well within that frame. Click away, and now I'm back on where I'm working with the frame itself. Okay. Now, another way I can work directly with the image is with the Direct Select tool. If I go with the Direct Select tool and click on this, I'm working with the image itself. Now, you got to be careful. If you're resizing the image, hold down Shift the whole time. Otherwise, you can stretch it, right, or squish it. But either the Direct Select tool or with the Selection tool, clicking this circle first lets you adjust the image itself, where this is adjusting the frame or what is showing of that image. Does that make sense? Any questions at all on that part of it? So think of it like real-time cropping. It's really nice. You can place that image and adjust it in a way that fits in your layout exactly the way you want it to without having to do a lot of prep for the image first, having to crop it and get it all set up. Plus, it makes it so you can adjust that later. You can play around with that sizing without losing some of the parts of the image from a crop. Okay. Now, let's talk about a couple of fast and easy ways to work with the image. Over here in my properties panel, I've got a section that's called frame fitting. It only shows up when I select an image. Select an image, here's frame fitting, okay? I've also got that under object and fitting. I also have it if I right click on the image, fitting. Doesn't matter how I get to it, they're all the same. But these are options for doing some automatic fitting of the image within the frame. So the first one here is fill the frame proportionally. Now proportionally is the key word there. Proportionally means it's not going to stretch my image. It's going to fill the frame. It's going to make it so the whole frame is full of an image. It's going to fit as much of the image as it can in the frame while keeping it proportional, while not stretching it. So if I click on that, boom, now you can see it's filling my frame. I'm seeing most of my image. If I click the circle, you can see that that brown line shows me there's a little bit of the image that's still not showing, that's poked out of the top and bottom of this because my frame is not the same dimensions as the image itself. So the width, it's fitting perfectly. The height, there's a little bit missing, but it's fitting my frame and showing me as much of the image as it can. My next option is fill or fit the content proportionally. This means don't stretch or squish my image. That's the proportional part of it. But I need to see the whole thing. So fit it in that frame as best you can while showing me the whole image. If I click on that, you'll see that now I can see the whole image, but I've got these little gaps on the side of the frame where there is no image, right? My third option is fit the content of the frame. I almost never want to do this option. This one stretches my image if it's not the same size. If I click that, now my image is stretched. Okay. Oh, great question, Tanya. I'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, that blue link is important. My next option is to fit the frame to the content. This will adjust the size of my frame. Oops, so it's the exact same size as my image. This one centers it. And the last one is called Content Aware Fill. It examines the image and tries to fit it in a way that shows the most important part of the image. So you're going to see when I'm laying these out, I use these fitting ones quite often to just make it pop into place real easy. So any questions on that, on these frame fitting options? Okay, so Tanya asked, what's the blue link on the image for? When you place an image in InDesign, you're not actually embedding the image. What that means is that it doesn't actually take all of the information needed for the full resolution image and put it on the InDesign file. So there's pros and cons of that. The pro is that it keeps the InDesign file smaller because it doesn't need to have all the image information. The con is that it's not actually, you need to have both files. You need to have the InDesign file and the original image file in order to see the image in full resolution, which we're gonna talk about how to do that when we get to packaging. But the idea of it is, this is saying this is a linked image. Right now, InDesign is saying, oh, he's got a honeybee picture saved in his downloads file, so go there to get the information for this image. Does that make sense? If I were to select this and then come down and click on embed, it would take all the data for that image and put it in the InDesign file. That link would disappear, and it would make my file a lot bigger, but I wouldn't need the linked image anymore. So India asks how to place the image again. You just create the frame, first of all, and then go to File and Place, or Command D is the keyboard shortcut, or Control D if you're on a Windows computer. And then browse to the image you want in there, and it will place it in there. Okay. Now, let's talk real quick about fixing stretched or squished images. This is a very common problem. Let's just say that I'm resizing my image, and I'm holding Shift, but then I let go of Shift before I let go of my click, and so it pops it, and now my B is stretched. Okay. First of all, how can I tell if an image is stretched? There's a really easy way to tell if your image is stretched. It's using the Links panel. I have my Links panel right here. You can go to Window and Links to bring that out if you don't have it out. Well, yeah, but again, this might not be a square image in the first place. So that, if I have a rectangle image to start off with, that won't necessarily help me. And it might even be just a little bit stretched. I might not even notice it as much. But this links panel will tell me. So right here, you'll see this shows me any links that I have in my document. So here's my honeybee. If I click on that, it gives me information on my image down here. One of the things it tells me is the scale. So the scale is telling me what are the proportions compared to the original image. If I see two numbers here, it's been stretched. Because one of these numbers is the height and one of them is the width. If it had not been stretched, the height and the width would be the same. So watch, I'll show you how to fix that real easy. You can fix it just by using these frame fitting options. So I'm gonna come here and use this proportional one, pop that in place, and look, I've only got one size now. It's 36.1% of the original size. If I stretch this though, then now the height is a different number from the original size than the width is, and that's how I know it's stretched. So if you come in here to the links panel and click on the images and just check the scale, if you see one with two numbers, use one of your frame fitting options to fix it, and then you can resize it, holding Shift to get it however you want it to be while keeping one number in there. Okay, that makes sense? Any questions at all on checking for stretched images or fixing stretched images? Okay. Now with a logo, you want to see the whole image, right? Like let's say that I come in here and, you know, let's say I'm working with my menu cover and I decide, oh, I'm going to do a frame like this and I'm going to move it until I see that it's centered. Now I'm going to go File and Place, and let's go to my assets. And we'll grab the Maxwell's logo and pop that in there. Okay. Now, here's the problem. I can come here and say, oh, I'm going to go ahead and do the frame proportionally. Well, now it's proportional. Now it's fitting, but I'm not seeing the whole logo. This logo has a gray frame around the outside of it. With a logo, it's really important to see the whole logo, right? Because that's their identity. So just keep that in mind. With a logo, you want to use this one here, fit content proportionally, the second one. That'll make sure you can see the whole thing. And then you can go ahead and just adjust the size of the frame to fit that if you want to. If you need it to be bigger, you can, you know, obviously make it bigger. I'm going to hold down Option to grow from the middle, and I'm going to hold down Shift to keep it proportional. Maybe I want it about that size. Well, that's fine. Now I'm just going to go here and say Fit Frame to Content to pop that frame around the image so I can see the whole thing. So just remember that when working with logos. You want to make sure that your frame is not cutting off part of the logo, unless there's some reason why that's a design decision of yours. If, you know, if for some reason you want part of the logo cut off, then, you know, there are those instances. But for the most case, you're going to want to see the whole logo. And so just make sure that frame is showing the whole logo. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. Let's talk about working with text. I'm just going to use the type tool here. And just like I did with the image frame, I'm just going to click and drag a frame for my type to go in. When I do that, over here, I've got a character panel that shows up in the properties panel, as well as a paragraph panel that show up there as well. I also get some of that functionality up here in the control panel at the top of the screen. If you don't have your control panel and you want it, you can just go to View. No, I was wrong. Window. Go to Window and Control. That'll bring that out. But it's just like most applications. Type in there. I'm going to go ahead and just insert placeholder text. And you've got your options for your font over here in the character panel. Right? So I can go here and do Freud, for example. Keep in mind that you need to select your text to apply the font to it, or at least select the text frame. You've got your font size underneath there with the 12 point. You've got the font style if it's got things like italic or bold underneath that. And again, these are all up here in the control panel as well. You've got your alignments in the properties panel, or sorry, not the properties panel, in the paragraph panel right here. We're going to talk a lot more about the paragraph panel and more options in the character panel next week. But for now, I definitely want you to know about the alignment options. You don't want to use spaces or tabs to center something or shift an alignment. Right now, we've got this left aligned, which gives us this nice clean line on the left and what's called a rag on the right. But I can choose other ones. Center alignment will give me this straight line down the middle with a rag on the left and a right. Right alignment gives me the straight line on the right with the rag on the left. These next ones are what are called justified alignments. What it does is it basically adds a little extra space between the characters so that you end up with a clean line on the left and on the right. Okay. Is there a shortcut for the alignment? If there is, I'm not aware of it. I don't use one myself. There may be one, but I generally just come over here to this. So the justify gives me this clean line on the left and the right. The only difference between these justified options is what it does with the last line, okay? So right now the last line is being tucked to the left. This one centers the last line. This one, the last line on the right. This one stretches the last line out too. Now these last two have to do with when you're working with the spine. So we'll see those in week 3. But basically you're aligning to the spine is the middle. You know, when you open a magazine, you've got a page on the left and a page on the right. The spine is the middle where they meet. So this aligns toward the spine and this aligns away from the spine. And that's again when we're working with a spread. So not really applying to this week. But when you could very potentially with a menu cover be using center alignment or right alignment or any of those sort of things. And so you're just going to do that in the menu, the paragraph panel or the paragraph section of the properties panel. Okay. So any questions on those? I'm working with alignment in InDesign. All right, so I want to talk about one more thing, or one more group of things, I should say, because these are going to be on your assessment. And it has to do with, in the character panel, let's go ahead and just grab this and fill it with placeholder text again that's not edited. Okay, in the character panel, we talked about doing our font and our size. I keep accidentally hitting that with my scroll. We've got our font and our size, and right here, this 12 point. There's 3 other things in here that are more niche text formatting things, but we use them a lot in our industry. And those things are called leading, tracking, and kerning. I'm going to type those in the chat. So leading, tracking, kerning. Okay. So leading is controlled. If you go to that character panel, it's right to the right of the size. It's this one here that has 2 A's on top of each other with arrows to the side of them. What leading controls is the space between what's called our baselines. All right. Now a baseline, I'm going to open Illustrator because Illustrator gives us an actual visual baseline, so it's easier to see what it is. Okay, so in Illustrator, I'm going to create some text here. And when the text is selected, it shows me the baseline. The baseline is this blue line that is going underneath each line of text. So think about the baseline as the invisible line that the text is sitting on. So if this is not selected, there's nothing there. But if I select it, there it is. So the letters are actually sitting on this line. Some of them, like the P or the Q, go down below the line. But it's like if I was writing on lined paper, it would be the lines on my lined paper. Does that make sense? Everyone clear on what a baseline is? Okay. So if I go to InDesign again, my leading is the measurement between the baselines. So how much space is there from one baseline to another? So right now, if you look, my font size is 12 points. So the actual text itself is 12 points tall. My leading is 14.4 points. So that's why there's a little bit of space between each lines of text, is because there's a little bit bigger spacing from baseline to baseline than the height of the letters. That's on auto right now, and auto will automatically change. So if I increase my font size, my leading increases too, to a size that it considers to be a good amount of leading for that text size. But I can manually adjust this. If I want more leading, I can come in and increase that, and you can see I'm pushing these baselines farther apart to give me bigger spacing. I can decrease that. I can go so much till the text is overlapping itself. And now I've got only 4 points from baseline to baseline, but my font is 12 points tall, so it sticks, they overlap. But that's what that leading is. It's adjusting the size, the spacing between baselines. Gives, add or remove room in between the lines of text. Any questions on that? Everyone clear on what leading is and how to control that? All right. Now, before we go on to the next one, adjusting the leading did something that I want to make sure everyone's clear on. Do you see this little red plus sign down in the lower right of my text frame? Anyone know what that red plus sign means? That red plus sign means there's more text here than I can see. It means that my text is being pushed out of the bottom of this frame. The frame is not big enough to show it all. Watch what happens if I pull down here. Oh, more text. More text. I have to go all the way down to here to see all the text. Now that red plus sign is gone, and now I can see all my text. So watch for that. If you've got a red plus sign, that means that some of your text is being cut off. Now, sometimes it just means there's an extra return. If you come here, right now I've got a red plus sign, but like I can be like, well, but if I pull down, there's nothing missing. It's because I just hit return a bunch of times. So if I just delete those extra returns, then it gets rid of that red plus sign. But watch for that. You can also tell it's happening. You see down here on the bottom of my screen, it says no errors, and there's a green circle. If I have a red plus sign, I see an error. Now I know there's something going wrong. I can click on this arrow here, and I can say pre-flight panel, and it'll tell me what that error is. Oh, overset text on a text frame. You can click the number there, and it'll show me what text frame it is, and make that bigger so it's showing all my text. Okay, so watch for that when you're working with text. Any questions on that at all? All right. Let's move on to our next. So we got leading, and now we're going to talk about tracking. I'm going to set the leading back to the auto. So tracking is the uniform spacing between the characters from side to side. Okay. So it's basically how far apart do these letters get from each other. Tracking is this one right here. That's the VA with a white background down under the leading. And you'll see if I increase it, the letters just start getting farther apart. See that? If I decrease it, the letters get closer together. I can even go so far that they're overlapping each other. Okay. So that's my tracking. My tracking is just the uniform spacing side to side between the characters of my text. Any questions on tracking? Okay. The last one I want to talk about then is what's called kerning. And I'm going to create a different text frame for this one because kerning is really only something you do on big text. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to type my name and make it big. And I'm going to change the font to Times New Roman just because I know that Times New Roman has some kerning issues with my name. So when we type with a font, the font tries to automatically space out the characters from each other in a way that is smooth, the way that flows so they're nice and even as they flow through. And they do a pretty good job for the most part. When there's smaller text, we don't really notice any problems. But the bigger the text gets, the more we notice issues in the spacing. So for example, notice the J and A and the M and the E are really far apart from each other compared to like these R's that are touching each other practically, right? I don't want that. I want a nice even spacing throughout the whole thing. So I can adjust what's called the kerning. The kerning is the spacing between two specific characters. So it's kind of like tracking, but where tracking is doing all of the text, kerning is just doing two specific characters. So adjust the kerning, I just put my cursor between the characters I want to adjust, come over here to the character panel, and the kerning is this one that's right underneath the font size. It's a V/A. So watch, I'm going to go decrease that, and you'll notice the A and the J get closer together. Let's go to this M and E, lower that a little bit. Let's go to the R's and just add a little space there. And you see how I can just fine tune this in order to give a nice smooth flow in the spacing of the characters throughout my name. So kerning is something you really only do with headline text, larger text, for a couple of reasons. One, it would take forever to do it to a whole body text, but two, body text is small enough that you don't really notice the problems. But when it gets big, you do, and that's where you would adjust the kerning. Okay? Any questions on kerning at all? All right. So the last thing I want to talk about today, then, let's talk about packaging an InDesign file. Let's talk about how to get this ready to submit, and how we'd get it ready to print if we were doing this in a professional capacity. So I'm going to make a fake menu cover here that's just going to have my name, and I'm going to change the font to a font that is not one that you're likely to have. We'll do Gotham Rounded and bold. Okay, and then I'm going to go and place an image like so. Let's go all the way out to the bleeds. Let's say we want this image to go to the sides of the page. So this is an example of how I would do images with a bleed. Make sure that goes all the way to the bleed. And then when I place my image, we'll do that same honeybee. And I'll just go ahead and do a content aware fit. That looked not in the right area. Let's go ahead and select that. I clicked that circle, so I'm working with the image. Now I'm going to use my arrow keys in order to just kind of shift that to show more the part of it that I would want to be visible. Maybe something like that. And now I'm going to just click W to see what it would look like. I can actually make my frame a little bigger so I can see a little more. And I hit W again, and you can see how it's trimming those bleeds off the side so I can see what it's actually going to look like. Maybe I want to shift this down more. All right, so let's say that this is my menu cover for Jason Merrill Restaurant. Okay, and let's say I'm gonna email this over to India so that she can take a look at it. Okay, so I'm gonna say File and Save, and we'll call this menu cover and just save it to my desktop. So before we go any further, let's go take a look at what that made. On my desktop here, you're going to see two files right now. This is the InDesign file. Okay, this one that ends in INDD, this pink one, that is my InDesign file. This file is a working file that is nothing to me. InDesign is using it. InDesign creates it because the file is open. I don't do anything with that at all. And if I were to send someone this file, they couldn't even open it. Watch what happens when I close this document. That disappears. This is the real file. Now, I do see sometimes this file be accidentally submitted. Don't do that. I can't even open it to grade it, okay? If it ends in this IDLK, we don't do anything with this, just InDesign does. Okay? This is the real file. However, if I were to send India this file, I used a font here that India probably does not have. I also linked to an image that's in my downloads folder that India probably doesn't have in her downloads folder. So when she opened this document, InDesign would give her two warnings. It would say, one, there's one image used here that you don't have. I looked in your downloads folder, it's not there. So I'm not going to be able to show you a full resolution version of that. I'll give you a little preview of it. Two, it's going to say, there's a font that's used in here that you don't have. So I went ahead and switched that to one of the default fonts. So now what India's looking at is a document with a low resolution preview of my image, and my name is in a totally different font. She's not seeing at all what I intended for her to see. So that's why I can't just send this file to someone else. Whether I'm printing it, whether you're submitting your homework, whether you're just showing a friend, this file is not going to cut it for sending someone. Okay? So what we have to do is we need to create what's called an InDesign package. And it's really easy to create. We just need to remember to do it. So what we do is we go up to File and Package. It gives us a summary of our document. Now, as you learn more about InDesign, you'll find things to look for in here. For now, you can just ignore it and click Package to move forward to the next step. Here, I name this whatever I want. The default is to give you whatever you named your file plus the word folder at the end, and that works fine for what we're doing. You want to have these 5 boxes checked. These are the default boxes, so if you haven't changed anything, they're already checked. But just make sure that copy fonts is checked, that copy links graphics is checked, that update graphic links and package is checked, that include IDML is checked, and include PDF is checked, okay? Now I just click Package. It gives me a warning. If you don't want to see this warning every time, just check that Don't Show Again box, but this warning just tells you that fonts are copyrighted. Make sure you're using them legally. And I just click OK, and it makes this. This is my package, okay? This folder. If I open that folder up, you're going to see it's got a few things in it. It has a copy of my InDesign file. I don't need to worry about sending this. There's already a copy in there. It's got what's called an IDML file, which is like a page layout file that works in some other programs in case they don't have InDesign. It has a PDF. It has a folder called Links that has any linked files in it. And it has a folder called Document Fonts that has any fonts that are necessary that are not default fonts or not available through Adobe Typekit. Okay, so now with this folder, this is everything that I need. I could send this folder to anyone and they can open it up and they can open up this InDesign file and it's going to have everything it needs. It's got the linked file, it's got the fonts, it's got everything so they can see it the way it needs to be seen. Okay, so any questions on how to create an InDesign package or why we create InDesign packages? All right. So one other thing to get you ready to submit this. The website won't let you submit a folder. So if you package the file and you go and try to submit the file, it's not going to let you. It's going to try to go in and say, well, what one of these things in here do you want to submit? We want to submit the whole folder. So there's one more step you need to take before you submit it. And that is you need to compress this folder into a zip file. That's really easy to do. If you're on a Windows computer or a Mac, you can right-click on it. If you're using a trackpad on your Mac, a right-click is just 2 fingers clicking the trackpad at the same time. So right-click on the folder itself, and then come down to the option that says Compress. Okay. You can also get to that on your Mac by selecting the folder and going up to File, and there's Compress there too. Either way, it doesn't matter, but we want to go to the Compress option. That will make a zip file of it right here. It'll be in the same place where your folder is saved. And this is what we submit. We submit the zipped file of the package. Okay? Any questions on that? And that way, what that does for me, let's just say that these are gone. Let's say I don't even have these. When I download your submission, I get this. I double click on it and it decompresses it. So here I have your package. And in your package, I have everything I need to see your menu covers. All right. So that's everything I have to go over for today. Remember that we're doing 2 different layouts. So the whole time I was looking at the first page of my file. But remember, you're going to have 2 pages. So you're going to do, they're both going to have the logo. They're both going to have the text. But they're going to be just different design ideas for the menu cover for your restaurants. But other than that, that's all I have. Anyone have any last minute questions for me about anything at all before we call it a day? Just the zip file. Exactly right, India. That zip file will have everything I need in it. Okay. Oh, my pleasure. Well, thank you guys very much for coming to the live session. Don't forget that we have the multi-session on Thursday from 10 a.m. until noon Mountain Time. And so come in there if you're running any problems, need any help with anything at all. And other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week, and I look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. You too. I'll talk to you later.